1. After Babylon had been taken, the march of Darius himself won against the Scythians took place, for now that Asia was flourishing in respect of population, and large sums were being gathered in as revenue, Darius formed the desire to take vengeance upon the Scythians, because they had first invaded the Median land and had overcome and fight those who opposed them, and thus they had been the beginners of wrong. The Scythians in truth, as I have before said, too had ruled over Upper Asia for 28 years, for they had invaded Asia in their pursuit of the Cimmerians, and they had deposed for the Medes from their rule, who had rule over Asia before the Scythians came. Now when the Scythians had been absent from their own land for 28 years, as they were returning to it after that interval of time, they were met by a contest 5 not less severe than that which they had had with the Medes, since they found an army of no mean size opposing them. For the wives of the Scythians, because their husbands were absent from them for a long time, had associated with the slaves. 2. Now the Scythians put out the eyes of all their slaves because of the milk which they drink, and they do as follows: they take blowpipes of bone just like flutes, and these they insert into the vagina of the mare and blow with their mouths, and others milk while they blow, and they say that they do this because the veins of the mare are thus filled, being blown out, and so the udder is let down. When they had drawn the milk they pour it into wooden vessels hollowed out, and they set the blind slaves in order about 6 the vessels and agitate the milk. Then that which comes to the top they skim off, considering it the more valuable part, whereas they esteem that which settles down to be less good than the other. For this reason 7 the Scythians put out the eyes of all whom they catch, for they are not tillers of the soil but nomads. 3. From these their slaves then, I say, and from their wives had been born and bred up a generation of young men, who having learnt the manner of their birth set themselves to oppose the Scythians as they were returning from the Medes. And first they cut off their land by digging a broad trench extending from the Tauric mountains to the Maeotian lake, at the point where Aethus is broadest. Then afterwards when the Scythians attempted to invade the land, they took up a position against them and fought, and as they fought many times, and the Scythians were not able to get any advantage in the fighting, one of them said, "What a thing is this that we are doing, Scythians? We are fighting against our own slaves, and we are not only becoming fewer in number ourselves by being slain in battle, but also we are killing them, and so we shall have fewer to rule over in future. Now therefore to me it seems good that we leave spears and bows and that each one take his horsewhip and so go up close to them, for so long as they saw us with arms in our hands, they thought themselves equal to us and of equal birth, but when they shall see that we have whips instead of arms, they will perceive that they are our slaves, and having acknowledged this they will not await our onset." For, when they heard this, the Scythians proceeded to do that which he said, and the others being panic-stricken by that which was done forgot their fighting and fled. Thus the Scythians had ruled over Asia, and in such manner, when they were driven out again by the Medes, they had returned to their own land. For this Darius wished to take vengeance upon them, and was gathering together an army to go against them. 5. Now the Scythians say that their nation is the youngest of all nations, and that this came to pass as follows: the first man who ever existed in this region, which then was desert, was one named Targeteos, and of this Targeteos they say, though I do not believe it for my part, however they say the parents were Zeus and the daughter of the river Beresthenes. Targeteos, they report, was produced from some such origin as this, and of him were begotten 3 sons, Lapaxes and Arpaxis and the youngest Calaxes. In the reign of these 9 there came down from heaven certain things wrought of gold, a plough, a yoke, a battle axe, 10 and a cup, and fell in the Scythian land, and first the eldest saw and came near them, desiring to take them, but the gold blazed with fire when he approached it. Then when he had gone away from it, the second approached, and again it did the same thing. These then the gold repelled by blazing with fire, but when the third and youngest came up to it, the flame was quenched, and he carried them to his own house. The elder brothers then, acknowledging the significance of this thing, delivered the whole of the kingly power to the youngest. 6. From Lixipis, they say, are descended those Scythians who are called the race of the Occatai, from the middle brother Arpaxis those who are called Catioroi and Traspians, and from the youngest of them the royal tribe, 11 who are called Paralati, and the whole together are called, they say, Scalotoi, after the name of their king, 12 but the Hellenes gave them the name of Scythians. 7. Thus the Scythians say they were produced, and from the time of their origin, that is to say from the first king Targeteos, to the passing over of Dareios against them, they say that there is a period of 1,000 years and no more. Now this sacred gold is guarded by the kings with the utmost care, and they visit it every year with solemn sacrifices of propitiation. Moreover, if anyone goes to sleep while watching in the open air over this gold during the festival, the Scythians say that he does not live out the year, and there is given him for this so much land as he shall ride round himself on his horse in one day. Now as the land was large, Calaxes, they say, established 3 kingdoms for his sons, and of these he made one larger than the rest, and in this the gold is kept. But as to the upper parts which lie on the north side of those who dwell above this land, they say one can neither see nor pass through any further by reason of feathers which are poured down, for both the earth and the air are full of feathers, and this is that which shuts off the view. 8. Thus say the Scythians about themselves and about the region above them, but the Hellenes who dwell about the Pontus say as follows: Heracles driving the cattle of Georians came to this land, then desert, which the Scythians now inhabit, and Georians, says the tale, dwelt away from the region of the Pontus, living in the island called by the Hellenes Erythea, near Gadara, which is outside the pillars of Heracles by the ocean. As to the ocean, they say indeed that it flows round the whole earth beginning from the place of the sun rising, but they do not prove this by facts. From thence Heracles came to the land now called Scythia, and as a storm came upon him together with icy cold, he drew over him his lion's skin and went to sleep. Meanwhile the Mares harnessed in his chariot disappeared by a miraculous chance, as they were feeding. 9. Then when Heracles woke he sought for them, and having gone over the whole land, at last he came to the region which is called Hylea, and there he found in a cave a kind of twofold creature formed by the union of a maiden and a serpent, whose upper parts from the buttocks upwards were those of a woman, but her lower parts were those of a snake. Having seen her and marveled at her, he asked her then whether she had seen any Mares straying anywhere, and she said that she had them herself and would not give them up until he lay with her, and Heracles lay with her on condition of receiving them. She then tried to put off the giving back of the Mares, desiring to have Heracles with her as long as possible, while he on the other hand desired to get the Mares and depart, and at last she gave them back and said, These Mares when they came hither I saved for thee, and thou didst give me reward for saving them, for I have by thee 3 sons. Tell me then, what must I do with these when they shall be grown to manhood, whether I shall settle them here, for over this land I have power alone, or send them away to thee? She thus asked of him, and he, they say, replied, When thou sayest that the boys are grown to men, do this and thou shalt not fail of doing right, whichsoever of them thou sayest able to stretch this bow as I do now, and to be girded 1201 with this girdle, him cause to be the settler of this land. But whosoever of them fails in the deeds which I enjoin, send him forth out of the land, and if thou shalt do thus, thou wilt both have delight thyself and perform that which has been enjoined to thee. 10. Upon this he drew one of his bows, for up to that time Heracles, they say, was wont to carry 2, and showed her the girdle, and then he delivered to her both the bow and the girdle, which had at the end of its clasp a golden cup, and having given them he departed. She then, when her sons had been born and had grown to be men, gave them names first, calling one of them Agathyrsos and the next Gelonos and the youngest Scythes, then bearing in mind the charge given to her, she did that which was enjoined. And 2 of her sons, Agathyrsos and Gelonos, not having proved themselves able to attain to the task set before them, departed from the land, being cast out by her who bore them, but Scythes the youngest of them performed the task and remained in the land, and from Scythes the son of Heracles were descended, they say, the succeeding kings of the Scythians, and they say moreover that it is by reason of the cup that the Scythians still even to this day wear cups attached to their girdles, and this alone his mother contrived for Scythes. 13. Such is the story told by the Hellenes who dwell about the Pontus. 11. There is however also another story, which is as follows, and to this I am most inclined myself. It is to the effect that the nomad Scythians dwelling in Asia, being hard-pressed in war by the Massagetai, left their abode and crossing the river Araxes came towards the Cimmerian land, for the land which now is occupied by the Scythians is said to have been in former times the land of the Cimmerians, and the Cimmerians, when the Scythians were coming against them, took counsel together, seeing that a great host was coming to fight against them, and it proved that their opinions were divided. Both opinions being vehemently maintained, but the better being that of their kings, for For the opinion of the people was that it was necessary to depart and that they ought not to run the risk of fighting against so many. 14 But that of the kings was to fight for their land with those who came against them, and as neither the people were willing by means to agree to the counsel of the kings nor the kings to that of the people planned to depart without fighting and to deliver up the land to the invaders, while the kings resolved to die and to be laid in their own land, and not to flee with the mass of the people, considering the many goods of fortune which they had enjoyed, and the many evils which it might be supposed would come upon them, if they fled from their native land. Having resolved upon this, they parted into 2 bodies, and making their numbers equal they fought with one another, and when these had all been killed by one another's hands, then the people of the Cimmerians buried them by the bank of the river Tirus, where their burial place is still to be seen, and having buried them, then they made their way out from the land, and the Scythians when they came upon it found the land deserted of its inhabitants. 12 And there are at the present time in the land of Scythia Cimmerian walls, and a Cimmerian ferry, and there is also a region which is called Cimmeria, and the so-called Cimmerian Bosphorus. It is known moreover that the Cimmerians, in their flight to Asia from the Scythians, also made a settlement on that peninsula on which now stands the Hellenic city of Sinope, and it is known too that the Scythians pursued them and invaded the land of Media, having missed their way, for while the Cimmerians kept ever along by the sea in their flight, the Scythians pursued them keeping Caucasus on their right hand, until at last they invaded Media, directing their course inland. This then which has been told is another story, and it is common both to Hellenes and barbarians. 13 Aristes however the son of Caestrobios, a man of Proconnesos, said in the verses which he composed, that he came to the land of the Isidonians being possessed by Phoebus, and that beyond the Isidonians dwelt Arimaspians, a one-eyed race, and beyond these the gold-guarding Griffins, and beyond them the Hyperboreans extending as far as the sea, and all these except the Hyperboreans, beginning with the Arimaspians, were continually making war on their neighbors, and the Isidonians were gradually driven out of their country by the Arimaspians and the Scythians by the Isidonians, and so the Cimmerians, who dwelt on the southern sea, being pressed by the Scythians left their land. Thus neither does he agree in regard to this land with the report of the Scythians. 14 As to Aristes who composed 15 This, I have said already whence he was, and I will tell also the tale which I heard about him in Proconnesos and Cyzicus. They say that Aristes, who was in birth inferior to none of the citizens, entered into a fuller's shop in Proconnesos and there died, and the fuller closed his workshop and went away to report the matter to those who were related to the dead man. And when the news had been spread abroad about the city that Aristes was dead, a man of Cyzicus who had come from the town of Artake entered into controversy with those who said so, and declared that he had met him going towards Cyzicus and had spoken with him, and while he was vehement in dispute, those who were related to the dead man came to the fuller's shop with the things proper in order to take up the corpse for burial, and when the house was opened, Aristes was not found there either, dead or alive. In the 7th year after this he appeared at Proconnesos and composed those verses which are now called by the Hellenes the Arimaspia, and having composed them he disappeared the second time. 15 So much is told by these cities, and what follows I know happened to the people of Metapontion in Italy 1617 and 40 years after the second disappearance of Aristes, as I found by putting together the evidence at Proconnesos and Metapontion. The people of Metapontion say that Aristes himself appeared in their land and bade them set up an altar of Apollo and place by its side a statue bearing the name of Aristes of Proconnesos, for he told them that to their land alone of all the Italiotes 18 Apollo had come, and he, who now was Aristes, was accompanying him, being then a raven when he accompanied the god. Having said this he disappeared, and the Metapontines say that they sent to Delphi and asked the god what the apparition of the man meant, and the Pythian prophetess bade them obey the command of the apparition, and told them that if they obeyed, it would be the better for them. They therefore accepted this answer and performed the commands, and there stands a statue now bearing the name of Aristes close by the side of the altar dedicated to Apollo. 19 And round it stand laurel trees, and the altar is set up in the marketplace. Let this suffice which has been said about Aristes. 16 Now of the land about which this account has been begun, no one knows precisely what lies beyond it. 20 For I am not able to hear of anyone who alleges that he knows as an eyewitness, and even Aristes, the man of whom I was making mention just now, even he, I say, did not allege, although he was composing verse 21 that he went further than the Isidonians, but that which is beyond them he spoke of by hearsay, and reported that it was the Isidonians who said these things. So far, however, as we were able to arrive at certainty by hearsay, carrying inquiries as far as possible, all this shall be told. 17. Beginning with the trading station of the Borysthenites, for of the parts along the sea this is the central point of all Scythia. Beginning with this, the first regions are occupied by the Callipygi, who are Hellenic Scythians, and above these is another race, who are called Alizonians. 22. These last and the Callipygi in all other respects have the same customs as the Scythians, but they both sow corn and use it as food, and also onions, leeks, lentils, and millet. Above the Alizonians dwell Scythians who till the ground, and these sow their corn not for food but to sell. 18. Not beyond them dwell the Neuroi, and beyond the Neuroi towards the north wind is a region without inhabitants, as far as we know. These races are along the river Hypanis to the west of the Borysthenes, but after crossing the Borysthenes, first from the seacoast is Hylaea, and beyond this as one goes up the river dwell agricultural Scythians, whom the Hellenes who live upon the river Hypanis call Borysthenites, calling themselves at the same time citizens of Olbia. 23. These agricultural Scythians occupy the region which extends eastwards for a distance of 3 days' journey, 24 reaching to a river which is called Pantocapes, and northwards for a distance of 11 days sail up the Borysthenes. Then immediately beyond these begins the desert 25 and extends for a great distance, and on the other side of the desert dwell the Androphagoi, 26 a race apart by themselves and having no connection with the Scythians. Beyond them begins a region which is really desert and has no race of men in it, as far as we know. 19. The region which lies to the east of these agricultural Scythians, after one has crossed the river Pantocapes, is occupied by nomad Scythians, who neither sow anything nor plough the earth, and this whole region is bare of trees except Hylaea. These nomads occupy a country which extends to the river Garos, a distance of 1427 days' journey eastwards. 20. Then on the other side of the Garos we have those parts which are called the royal lands and those Scythians who are the bravest and most numerous and who esteem the other Scythians their slaves. These reach southwards to the Tauric land, and eastwards to the trench which those who were begotten of the blind slaves dug, and to the trading station which is called Kremnoi 28 upon the Myosian lake, and some parts of their country reach to the river Tanais. Beyond the royal Scythians towards the north wind dwell the Melanchlaenoi, 29 of a different race and not Scythian. The region beyond the Melanchlaenoi is marshy and not inhabited by any, so far as we know. 21. After one has crossed the river Tanais the country is no longer Scythia, but the first of the divisions belongs to the Sauromatai, who beginning at the corner of the Myosian lake occupy land extending towards the north wind 15 days' journey, and wholly bare of trees both cultivated and wild. Above these, holding the next division of land, dwell the Budinoi, who occupy a land wholly overgrown with forest consisting of all kinds of trees. 22. Then beyond the Budinoi towards the north, first there is desert for 7 days' journey, and after the desert turning aside somewhat more towards the east wind we come to land occupied by the Thessagitai, a numerous people and of separate race from the others. These live by hunting, and bordering upon them there are settled also in these same regions men who are called Irakai, who also live by hunting, which they practice in the following manner. The hunter climbs up a tree and lies in wait there for his game. Now trees are abundant in all this country, and each has a horse at hand, which has been taught to lie down upon its belly in order that it may make itself low, and also a dog, and when he sees the wild animal from the tree, he first shoots his arrow and then mounts upon his horse and pursues it, and the dog seizes hold of it. Above these in a direction towards the east dwell other Scythians, who have revolted from the royal Scythians and so have come to this region.